Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. In October 2020, Nigeria witnessed one of the youth-led wide protests across the country as a result of police brutality and, of course, how we know how it went, and SARS. And October 20th, 2020, the unthinkable happened, and though it has become history, it has not completely left the polity of Nigeria. Recently, the Lagos state government was accused through a leaked memo of burying 103 persons, and the conversation has been neither here nor there. But today we will be having one of us, not one of us though, he actually partook in the protest and played a major role in that respect. And of course, in the field of governance, he is known, he is Dakbo Adaramewa, is a governance consultant. Good morning, Mr. Dakbo, and welcome to the program.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, it's good to have you.
Thank you.
When you saw that leaked memo, 103 persons to be buried, what came to your mind?
Well, firstly, for those of us who have been following this case, the fact that people died at the toll gate is not news. It shouldn't come as a surprise. The fact that we have video evidence that everyone can see and judge with their own eyes. You can see bodies spewed all over the streets. You had the CNN investigation. You also had the judicial panel. This judicial panel was not made up of NSAS protesters. It was made up of justices, former and retired police officials, and other legal minds in Nigeria, respectable individuals. And on page 13 and 14, which I encourage everybody to go and read, they clearly state that their state government, through the military, invited the military and killed people at the toll gate. And then they went on to, get rid of the evidence to that. So it's not news that they killed people. Now, but there's a thing about the truth. No matter how long you deny it, it will always resurface. And we are seeing that now in terms of this leaked memo, which no doubt came from another member of their team who is disgruntled or maybe moved to see the amount of money that's been wasted. I think that's the only new thing that we are finding out from this, is that not only did these people kill these young people, but that these vultures, and I'm very careful in calling them vultures because they are feeding off the carcass of these people, are still engaged in a defrauding Lagosians and taking money. You can't claim that it takes 600,000 naira per person to bury people in a mass grave. So not only did you kill these people years ago, 3 years later, you've put up a structure that allows you to make money off the dead. I think that is a new low, and that is in fact the only part of the whole story that shocked me.
Okay, but are you looking at the argument that the Lagos state government is putting forth, which is looking at it from an objective perspective, you would not want to completely undermine or throw it aside? During the NSAS protest, wide protests across Lagos in different local governments, there were cases of people being killed in other places, and the Ministry of Health or the Ministry of Environment that went around to pick these corpses from the road brought them straight to the morgue. The argument put forth by the government is that these persons, these 103 persons that were to be buried, are from these other places and none from the Lekki toll gate.
I think to say that all 103 came from Lekki Tollgate would probably be very inaccurate. Okay. To say that none of them came from Lekki Tollgate would also be inaccurate. Okay. And if you are claiming as a state government that none of them came from Lekki Tollgate, then where are the bodies of the people who died at Lekki Tollgate? If they're not part of this 103 that you're making money off, where are the bodies of the people who died at the tollgate? Because I think it's beyond doubt for any reasonable person that people were killed at the toll gate. So whether or not all 103 came from the toll gate, it is an overwhelming shame and a matter of disgrace that 103 souls that we know of were lost that day, all because the youth of the country demanded that they be treated fairly and not be abused by the very institutions that are there to protect them.
All right, I just want to ask a question. Do you think that the government not being able to admit or not being or saying that the bodies were not around the Lekki tollgate is a way of trying to run away from the very question which a lot of Nigerians have been asking: who gave the order? Do you think that might also be the reason?
I think that definitely plays a role. The truth will surface eventually. You know, there are members of the armed forces who know what exactly happened that day. And the current regime will not be in power forever. And at some point, these people will feel they have the confidence to speak out. The thing is, their greatest mistake, and they have come to realize now, was killing innocent Nigerians that day. Because in it planted the very seeds of the desire for a new Nigeria. A new generation was born. And the obedient movement is just the first fruits. That is the first fruit of what they have done to us. And in no way is the end of it. We still have the court case to settle. But even beyond that, a new generation has awoken. And it's off the backs of what they did, off the blood that they sowed that day. And that generation is not going anywhere. My hope is that any politician who happens to be watching this should wake up to that reality and start to align themselves with where politics is shifting to, where power is shifting to, back to the people, start to align themselves with that and come out and say what they know and challenge the government on this issue, because it's an absolute waste of human life.
All right. Now, so let's quickly look at what happened yesterday at the court, which is which one word I could liken it to the NSAS, and what happened yesterday is breakdown of law and order. The DSS took Emefiele, they charged him to court, and the court has granted him bail, which he's supposed to go into the custody of the Nigerian Correctional Service. Now the DSS and a prison official were in a scuffle. Now the papers says they were in a fight, in a clash, but from the pictures, from the video we got, we could see that the DSS was actually molesting a prison official. Now the question now is the court really in charge? Because the court has given an order and the DSS is taking another order. What can you say about that?
I think the mistake we make as Nigerians is a failure to understand how democracy works and feeling that we are beyond absolute collapse. It is not anybody's desire to see that this country collapses, but if we do not uphold the tenets of democracy, we will fall and collapse. Now, it doesn't matter how you feel about Emefiele, it doesn't matter how you feel about El Zakzaky, there is separation of powers. The courts should have the final say. If the court says somebody has been granted bail and should be remanded in the custody, then it is well within the rights of the prison officials to try and take them back. The DSS, you know, picking him up can be likened to kidnapping. Because except they're going to come out with a new set of charges as to why they arrested him yesterday, it is kidnapping in broad daylight in front of the entire nation. It shows us that we no longer have law and order. It shows us that nobody respects the courts anymore. And the courts, these are the very courts that are the last hope of the common man. So we as Nigerians, whether or not we like Emefiele or we like any particular individual, must stand up to fight for our democracy. Let us not be a forgetful generation, and let us not forget that this democracy that we have, it didn't come easy. People fought and sacrificed to get us this far. And if we all sit back and watch it be eroded, government after government, you know, we would have no hope in the end. And it's been a gradual process. You know, it has happened before this regime as well. At one point, you know, judges were arrested, and all of these kind of non-entities have been happening so far. And now we're getting to the point where in broad daylight, you know, our judges are being disregarded and the law is being set aside by, you know, militias at this point, because they're not operating within the remit of the law. They seem to be, in effect, bandits operating under their own law. So who are they?
All right. I want you to be careful when you use the word fight for our democracy. Fight for our democracy. Maybe you will need to, you know, give some more light to the word, to the use of that word, fight. However, let me take you a little bit back to the NSAS protest, because I need us to consider a particular thought that could be disturbing to the mind. And it's about how either the Nigerian military, the Nigerian police, the DSS, as Olumide has said, the way and manner they carry out their duties, and the thoughts that they are dealing with Nigerian. I am dealing with a Nigerian, if I'm a DSS official, I am dealing with a Nigerian. Whether he's protesting on the street, carrying placard, or is even disobeying the law, he is not he's not armed with a lethal weapon. Have you thought of the relationship that should exist between an armed officer of the law and dealing with that civilian in a way to respect its fundamental human right and at the same time to protect the country from chaos and disorder?
Well, there's two questions there. Let me tackle the last question first. Now, it will change when our security forces understand that their primary loyalty is to Nigeria and to the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, regardless of who is sitting in office. We do not pledge allegiance to the person, we pledge allegiance to the presidency, the office that they occupy. And in as much as their order or anybody's order is in alignment with the Constitution, then we should always support that. But we should never forget that we're all Nigerians, and the reasons these laws are there in the first place is to protect and help us, you know, and so there has to be that love for country. I remember during the U.S. insurrection, the president at the time tried to give instructions to the forces to take action and to do things that were against the Constitution, and they flat out refused. They flat out refused because they're...
Talking about the January 6th
January 6th insurrection in the US.
Where the capital was ransacked. Okay.
Yes. So they pledged allegiance to the Constitution of their country, and they love their country first. So everybody has to recognize that you protect Nigeria from threats, internal and external. And that internal threat can come from somebody who is holding an office. Now, my only plea is that the people who have these guns, who are there to protect Nigerians, never forget that your family members are among us, these civilians, as you look at us. Your extended family among us. Your children might grow up one day and decide that, no, they don't want to follow your path and become an officer of the law. And so they become civilians. And how would you feel if somebody who had a gun or who happened to be a security force treated them the same way you are treating us as civilians? That's my hope. Now, as to the second question, when I say fight for our democracy, I mean defend it. I mean stand up and speak and be vocal. There are certain powers within the remit of the law that we have. We can recall, our House of Rep members. We can recall our House of Assembly members. Yes, we can. It's within our power. Let's call them.
You know why I am laughing. You know why I'm laughing. But I want to briefly, the first question you tackled, I want to briefly take you back because you made allusion to January, the Capitol riot by virtue of the statement and the speech that was made by former President Donald Trump. Yeah. Now, does the Nigerian police officer knows his right or the right of the average Nigerian that no matter how provoked I am, I'm not supposed to shoot this Nigerian because he is not armed. My life is not, he is not threatening the life of the security officer. We've heard several cases where officers kill people extrajudicially because they are provoked. Even a lady, a pregnant woman, I'm sure you've not forgotten that. So does our military officials, do they have that knowledge?
Well, I think based on the evidence, then we would have to say no. But it is on the leadership of the country to ensure that not only are we're very thorough about the kinds of people that we recruit, to ensure that also that they're mentally stable as well. It's a very important part, the mental stability of these individuals and also the education that they have. What are their qualifications at the time that they're joining these forces and what kind of training? It's all well and good beating them and, giving them all that hard training. But in terms of understanding what their purpose is and understanding their role in society, I don't think we emphasize that too much in terms of the training. And that's evident. And I'm saying that based on the evidence that we see, police assaulting people and beating people and all these kind of things are happening. And it's our hope that we continue to see a decline in these incidences, hopefully on the... Yeah.
All right, I would like to ask you more questions, but let's quickly go on a short break and we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Welcome back and many thanks for joining us on the program. We're still having a conversation with Dakpo Adara Mewa, a governance consultant. Now, I remember we started the program with this 103 bodies that which of the memo that got leaked and what's been happening in the back and forth. The lawyer is already out again and he's talking about the contracts of that bill. I'm like, if it's going to take less than ₦1 million to bury all these people, why are we? But Mr. Akoshile said that it's not within his remit to discover the contract or what's behind the contract, the formulation of the contract. So he should leave that. But I'm going to put it across to you. Where are we heading with this? What can be done?
I think, unfortunately, those who have been lost have been lost. Now is the time for the government to issue that apology, which was part of the recommendations of the judicial panel. Issue that apology, and let's not be wasteful. I mean, we are telling Nigerians that things are tough, bear with us. You know, people are walking to work because they can't afford fuel, and yet you're spending, in fact, it shocks me that you're willing to spend 600,000 naira to bury one particular individual, which seems like a government that is willing to spend more on dead Lagosians than it is to spend on live ones, you know, on provision of care, the provision of transportation, and any palliative that will ease the suffering. Imagine if they decided to give that same amount to, you know, the poorest Lagosians. What a difference that would make to their lives, at least to ease them through this period of difficulty. So there's so much that the government can do. And in terms of identifying the body, this is 2023, for God's sake. We have artist impressions that can look at a body and at least complete the face, even if parts of it are missing, and draw it up. We have CGI that we can use to complete the face, and we can put it out there in the newspaper and have the faces of these individuals so that people can come forward and actually claim the bodies. But most importantly, it's also imperative that as a government, they do what they tell Lagosians to do. They tell Nigerians that and Lagosians that we should bear with them and we should all suffer this suffering together because things will get better. But yet at the same time, we're wasting money and they're also spending money lavishly on themselves. So those would be steps that they can take, you know, to obviously, you know, win the faith of the people. And how about an independent inquest into, you know, the cause of death of all these 103 individuals? It's not too late for that. They can definitely do that. And it's another way of building a bridge and showing Lagosians and Nigerians that, you know, let's just say that they are sorry for what they did, although sorry does not, you know, does not cut it, but at least shows that they have some compassion and they're not absolutely cold on the inside. I think that would be a good place to start.
All right, I want to ask you two questions. The first question, do you think the government, the state government, or Nigerians, is sort of an explanation as to what happened? Their own side of the story, because yes, a panel was set up and they've given their own recommendations. Now the state government, what are they going to do to answer to these recommendations and what really happened of the panel? Then secondly, the parents, they are the ones who bear the most burden. What can the government, even the federal government, do to, yes, we cannot replace a life, but something has to be done. Some way, a closure, something has to be done to these parents who don't even know where their wards are, their children, or whether they are alive or dead. What can be done?
I think the government did respond. The Lagos State government responded in a white paper where they accepted, I think, about 14 of the recommendations, and then about another 20-something they said can be handled only by the federal government, and they disregarded some key recommendations, obviously, in an effort to continue their denial. Of the deaths that actually happened. So they have responded. And in regards to your second question, what can be done, I think according to the counsel of some of the victims of NSAS, the Lagos State government did, you know, decide to share words of cash to some victims and family members, although, you know, they're sharing the money, but then they're still saying, no, we didn't do anything, you know. So they have given out those compensation. But I think if you're to do anything at this point, it would be to come out and say this is actually what happened. I mean, Governor Sanwo-Olu should wake up to the fact that, in theory, you know, he shouldn't be striving to please his godfathers anymore. You know, however, he focuses on doing things for Lagosians and Nigerians, and he started, it would seem, at that point, you know, to admit some wrongs, but it seems his handlers pulled him back, and then obviously he changed his stance and all of those kind of things at that time. So the truth sometimes is the best thing you can offer to people. It gives us closure and makes us understand that, you know, you are somewhat sorry for what you did.
But if you're talking about apology, tendering an apology, wouldn't that be owning up to what you are denying?
Well, so is giving out money.
Okay.
So if you're going to give money to the victims, according to their lawyers who have gone on record and in interviews and admitted that yes, there were millions handed to their clients. You know, if you're going to hand out this money, you know, then you are invariably saying that you are guilty of what we're accusing you. So why stop there? Why not just top it up with an apology?
Okay. But there's one thing I still want to ask. The consequences and what resulted from the NSAS protest. It's been a protest that even garnered global attention. From that consequences, protests seem to be the last resort when people, dissenting voices are calling for government attention with regards to policy. And as we're talking, the Nigerian doctors are going on strike. Nigerian Labour Congress will go on strike. Students, hardship by virtue of fuel removal, strike is looming. Protests might be the only way they can, you know, vent this disapproval. But do you think people will want to protest?
I think part of what people who are in power would have wanted is that after killing people, it brings an end to protest. But it's not the first time people were killed under the Abacha regime. People have been getting killed for protesting, but it doesn't stop people fundamentally, because oftentimes it's better to speak up, even at the risk of death, than it is to stay quiet and face the same certain death, you know? So either way, you know, there's no relative safety, so why not speak up in the hopes that at least it can make a difference? And so my hope is that, you know, Nigerians come out, and if they feel the need to, and that this government does not seek to clamp down, but instead understands that there are legitimate reasons as to why people might want to come out and protest. And beyond that, we've also shown that these protests are not just talk, as we did in the last election. Had it not been for the great malpractices that we saw, we would have seen a change in power in Lagos State. So it's not over in any way, and it will continue. Like I said, the seeds of a new Nigeria were planted 2010, 2020. We saw the first fruits in the last election, and our hope is that the court does what is right, but if they choose not to, we will meet them at the polls in the next election.
Thank you very much, Dakpo Adaramewa, Governor's Consultant. Thank you for joining us and giving us your time this morning in our conversation. And that's where we will be drawing the curtain this morning on the program. And thanks for watching. Tea or Coffee continues after this program. My name is Oyimpriye Krumale. Good morning to you once again.
It's been a pleasure staying with us on the newspaper review on High Impact Television. Do join us tomorrow for another thrilling edition. I'm Olumide Shokoya. Have a lovely day.